Hi, I'm Darren and welcome to New Factory Classics, and today I'm going to do some off-the-cuff talking about the new show, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. You know what I'm finding really interesting about this show is that it starts out basically the same way the story for Peter Parker in the MCU started out with, but with one major change. Doctor Strange shows up pretty early in the story and he ends up fighting a symbiote. And while that doesn't have much effect on the story, what it really does is it destroys Peter's school, causing him to go to a different high school, while also leaving the spider that will eventually bite him and turn him into Spider-Man. By going to this different school, he's going to meet an entirely new set of friends, basically setting him off on an entirely different storyline. His timeline has branched off just because of Doctor Strange showing up. And I think this is going to be a big dichotomy between what we saw as Spider-Man in the MCU and what will happen to Peter Parker in this new series. And things are still very similar to what the MCU was when we first met our Peter Parker. The Avengers exist. We can assume that the Battle of New York happened a year or two earlier. Other things that are the same is Aunt May is still single, Uncle Ben died very recently. He probably died maybe just a few weeks or a few months before the start of Peter's first day in high school. But there's no Flash Thompson. Instead, there's Lonnie Lincoln, who is actually his friend. He may be a jock, but he's actually very smart and wants to be friends with Peter. Nico Minoru is his best friend, and it's actually a girl. This is vastly different than his best friend in the MCU, Ned. But by far, what the biggest change to this storyline is the fact that he will not meet Tony. He will not be trained by the biggest Avenger in that world at that time, Iron Man. Instead, he may barely only meet the Avengers later on in this series. He is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and he's so focused on local crime. So his mentor in this show will actually be Norman Osborn. Still a billionaire, still a genius in robotics, but will have a completely different view of society. As we know, at one point in most comic books, Norman Osborn becomes the Green Goblin. How will this affect the fact that Peter is being trained and mentored by an eventual villain? While Tony wasn't great and tried to sleep with his aunt, he at least was a hero. And so what we're going to see is a Peter Parker that's experiencing the world in a completely different fashion. The first one was forced into the Avengers and into world and universe-ending situations so very young. This one is dealing with local pyromaniacs and local criminals because he is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And now he's being mentored by the one and only Norman Osborn. And here comes your spoiler alert. Please stop if you don't want to have the first 2 episodes ruined. Norman already knows that he's Spider-Man. So I imagine things will begin very well. He'll get better web shooters. He's having to currently use ones that he developed in his own bedroom. Pretty soon he will have his own billionaire financier, just like he did in the MCU, but this one will eventually go evil and crazy. My hope is that there will be an obvious dichotomy between the two Peters. Maybe they started out in the same fashion, but their branches are going to lead them in vastly different directions. Both of them will be Spider-Man, both of them will be financed by a billionaire, but both of them will have different endings. One actually gave up his identity as Spider-Man, and also gave up his identity as Peter Parker towards the end of that series. This other one gets to, at least currently, embrace being Peter Parker and Spider-Man separately, with only one other person knowing. I'm sure many other characters in this show will know by the end of this season, and many more will know at the end of future seasons if it gets some. But this Peter Parker gets to stay in the neighborhood. He gets to work on stopping crime, and soon he will get more gadgets. But where else the future leads him, we'll have to find out. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and check out those other videos on screen now.